there, welcome along to In the Loop, the weekly theme park news show from Park Rush. I'm Tom, and joining me, as ever, is Josh.
Hello there.
Hello, Josh. How's it going?
Very good, thank you. Yourself?
Not too bad, not too bad. I've started the day in the best possible way with a butterbeer.
Oh, delicious butterbeer.
Yep. This is a real vintage, this flask at this point. I believe it dates back to 2010, which I think was opening year of
Wow.
Hogsmeade. Yeah. I mean, they present it as being a sort of long, almost ancient historical location in the books and films, but yeah, it's only 12 years old. It's really not that old.
Yeah.
They even have Wi-Fi. It's quite incredible.
Whoa.
Yeah. Anyway, I suppose, in terms of visual gags and bits and things, we should keep them fairly limited this week, because not only are we on YouTube this week, as per usual, thanks, by the way, to everyone who watched last week's, our most viewed episode.
Hell
Incredible.
yeah.
Given that, it's inevitable that this week's is probably our least viewed episode. But stay with us. There are some good stories to talk about this week. But if you're listening on the normal podcast feed, where we come out every Monday, you'll also be hearing this. Just to save us a bit of work, essentially. We've had a busy few weeks, lots of podcast stuff in the works, and we thought we'd save ourselves a few extra hours of work and allow In the Loop to double up as In the Loop as ever, but also as the main podcast this week. So if this is your first time exposed to In the Loop, welcome along. It's good to have you with us. The idea being, of course, that as the podcast pivoted towards trip reports and whatnot over the last few weeks and months, because we've actually been able to get out of this country and see some theme parks, we were letting a lot of news pass us by, so that's where this show has come in. And each week we basically pick out 3 stories, plus another topic of interest, a rumour perhaps, to discuss. Without further ado, I think we should just get into it, Josh, because like I say, there's some cool stuff to talk about this week, potentially.
Yeah.
We'll start with The Lord of the Rings.
Oh boy.
I would say cue the music, but I don't want us to get taken down from YouTube. So
Attack on the Harvester Eyes of God.
Watch it, Josh. Jesus. Watch it.
Da 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 da. Sorry, that's enough.
That's it.
We'll
That's
get
it.
cut
We're
off.
done. We're
Yeah.
done. No, you can't even hear the rest of what I'm about to say now, unfortunately. We've been muted, I think. Anyway, Lord of the Rings. Long been a dream theme park project for many, I feel. I don't know how old you were, Josh. Could you even talk when you first started dreaming of a Lord of the Rings land at a theme park? Were you still goo-goo gaggering back then?
Yes, Lord of the Rings already in my mind was the ideal theme park location. I hadn't seen or heard of Lord of the Rings at that point, or theme parks, but I could feel it.
Yeah. Well, there's long been talk, hasn't there, of whether anyone might look to pick up the theme park rights specifically to the Lord of the Rings. Since certainly the films originally came out, Universal has long been, I think, people's preferred choice, especially since we've seen what they've done with Harry Potter.
Yep.
But at least for now, in something of a twist, the theme park rights have been snapped up by somebody else. Now, as someone who tries to stay across kind of video game news, the company known as Embracer have become somewhat familiar to me in recent times. They've basically been going around snapping up just about anyone who bats an eyelid at them. And they've now, somewhat out of left field, picked up the rights to The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. Not just theme parks, but of course video games, but also to make movies, to make TV. Basically,
everything but the
any
books,
sort of,
right? It's
any
basically
sort
what
of
they've
form of media. Yeah, I think so. So any sort of theatrical productions, merchandise, as I say, films, TV, theme parks, video games, that's all down to Embracer now, which is wild, really.
Yes.
We're looking at this version of the story from Variety, and I don't know about you, Josh. I don't think Embracer are known for theme parks. I think they're basically just known for video games for the most part.
Yes, I guess they're expanding into the thing here isn't specifically theme parks, I guess, but is they have
No.
bought the whole of Middle Earth Enterprises, which is a holding company for basically everything Lord of the Rings Hobbit related, other than the original literary works. But any like spin-off literary works, the films, TV show, like short TV shows. So I don't think the Amazon show counts, weirdly. There's some weird stuff around that. But yeah, anything else other than the books is Middle Earth Enterprises, and that is now Embracer. It's been embraced.
Yeah, indeed, yes. And if you've not heard of Embracer, and I wouldn't necessarily blame you, unless perhaps, as I say, you're a keen follower of video games, because they've been snapping up various studios and franchise rights for a while now. Some of the notable recent acquisitions have included, I believe, the Tomb Raider rights, so they've got those now.
Yeah.
That's certainly a video game franchise that has penetrated the mainstream in the past. In terms
For
of
sure.
just to mention, quite how and why they've suddenly got so much money to throw around. They're a Swedish company, but they've had a major investment from Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund, which again has, you'll likely be familiar with them if you're a sports fan, for example. They've invested big in things like F1 and also football in the past few years. The Newcastle United, there was a lot of controversy. Yeah, a lot of controversy around their takeover of Newcastle. My understanding basically is that obviously Saudi Arabia, in terms of their economic weight, have obviously been heavily reliant on oil. And as they seek to kind of diversify their economy, slash, score some PR wins, I guess you could say cynically, they have started to use this kind of vaguely named public investment fund to kind of go out there and basically invest on behalf of the government or the kingdom.
Yeah.
And stick their fingers in plenty of pies, and via Embracer, or by investing in Embracer, they've allowed Embracer to have enough financial clout to go around and do a load of these deals. So
yes,
Lord of the Rings theme park rights were kind of last on my sort of bingo card for what they might pick up, and it's kind of weird, but I don't know if we should therefore expect a Lord of the Rings theme park to crop up in Stockholm or somewhere. That would be.
Yeah, I wonder if actually this maybe makes a play for a Saudi Lord of the Rings.
Oh gosh!
Park.
Imagine.
Right?
Imagine. I mean, it's hotter than Mordor over there. So they could build something that would feel pretty at home.
Yeah, it'd be weird. The Hobbiton would be indoors, and then Mordor would just be outside.
Yeah. To be honest with you, I mean, just based on a quote in the article from Variety, I actually think what might end up happening, it would potentially be far more predictable in terms of the discussions that have gone on for years about where Lord of the Rings might eventually end up so far as a theme park land. We've got a quote here from Lars Wingefors, I'm going to go with, the founder and group CEO of Embracer. Blah, blah, blah. He's very happy to have bought Lord of the Rings. Who could have guessed? I think the key quote, however, is, "I am thrilled to see what lies in the future for this IP. Blah, blah, blah. Going forward, we will also look forward, to collaborating with both existing and new external licensees of our increasingly stronger IP portfolio." So he's not specifically talking about Lord of the Rings necessarily there, but basically putting it out there that they would be willing, whilst they own the rights to the things they've bought, they would be happy to kind of externally license those out. So again, in a way that we've seen plenty in the theme park space. Obviously, Universal, for example, don't own the Harry Potter rights, but they did a deal with Warner Brothers with the approval of J.K. Rowling to win those rights. They obviously essentially had to make a pitch. And to me, that last bit of that quote almost sounds like an invitation for someone to make them a pitch,
Yeah.
and
So
perhaps that's what'll end up happening.
maybe, Peter Jackson, maybe he wants to make another film, I know, based on some of the Silmarillion works, maybe something like that. I don't know. He would potentially have to go see them and ask them for the rights now. And obviously, if Universal wants to build a park or a land, then they'd have to go and speak to Embracer to get the rights there. If someone wants to do a short television series, like maybe, I don't know, Amazon wants to do a spin-off of their current show, which is just like a one-off series, they'd have to go and talk to them, and things like that.
Yeah. It's crazy. I mean, it's just another step along the way to everything that exists being owned by about 5 companies,
Yeah, right?
which I don't think is healthy, of course. But I mean, to me, what's also striking is how relatively cheap these rights appear to have gone for. They snapped up a load of stuff in one big $2 billion go, I believe. And I think the Middle Earth Enterprises is believed to be a fair chunk of that. But I don't know. I mean, you think about how much other major franchises or, corporations that essentially only exist as a house for certain big franchises. I'm thinking of things like Lucasfilm and whatnot over recent years or relatively recent years. I don't know. I almost would have expected this to go for more than that, but
Yeah, I mean, you think of like, I don't know, like Minecraft going to Microsoft, or any of the recent purchases in video games. 2 billion for Lord of the Rings seems quite cheap. That doesn't even fill the hole in the Cineworld balance sheets.
yeah, well, Cineworld will be absolutely desperate for Embracer to get a move on a new Lord of the Rings film trilogy. Please.
I'm looking forward to having my Embracer Unlimited card soon. They're the only people that can afford to buy up Cineworld.
Maybe they'll just buy up Cineworld. Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
Lord of the Rings 24/7.
Yeah.
Oh,
Interesting times, as
yes.
people like to say about the absolute terrible times that we live in. But if we can at least get a Lord of the Rings theme park out of somebody before the world burns, then that's something.
It's Free Mode and Asmodee, I assume, are video game studios that they have on board. I don't know if you know that. So they're the two companies that are working on the IP, with the IP already.
Right. The Lord of the Rings rights it's weird. It's like they've been playing hot potato with them for a while. They've ended up in all sorts of strange places over the last few years. Like, it felt like there was a fairly concentrated strategy back in the kind of the peak of the movie days, like the early 2000s. It was like, right, so sort of New Line and Peter Jackson are working on these films. You had EA making the video games, the books were the books, and that was basically it.
Yeah.
And now you've got, now they're all over the place, obviously, because you had Warner Brothers put out the Hobbit films. You've got Amazon making their show. You've got video games coming out from all over the shop.
Yeah, Tolkien Estate and Warner Brothers had that litigation over the rights to the films. That was settled out of court in 2017, as this article says. It's all a bit. New Line Cinema's making a new film called The Lord of the Rings: The War of the Rohirrim. That they announced last year. So it's all up in the air.
Interesting. I did not know about that.
No.
Another film I didn't know about.
What?
Big Thunder Mountain.
What a segue.
What a segue. Thanks very much. We move on to deadline for this story. So Disney obviously have been getting back into the theme park movie game, which has been great. For people that don't know, this must have been 2 or 3 years ago at this point, but as part of our podcast, we made our way through what we thought was the entire history of theme park films, a history which, based on the quality of those films, we did not expect ever to be added to. Because basically, it was like, well, Pirates of the Caribbean's pretty good. And then it was just a real sad state of affairs from there on out.
Yeah.
We went through such films, such absolute delights as The Haunted Mansion, The Country Bears, Tomorrowland. What else was there? There were Tower of Terror, starring Kirsten Dunst.
That mission to Mars.
Mission to Mars, yes, with Don Cheadle.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
yeah,
I think there were others. There were more than I would ever have anticipated.
more
I
than
think
more
maybe-
than you want.
Oh, 100%.
Well,
Yeah.
it's less than I want, but the quality was less than I want.
Anyway, they've clearly started to kind of explore how they could maybe get back into this space. We got Jungle Cruise last year, which was decent. You know, it was fun enough. I think, you know, a sequel was expected, given that did pretty well for them, both at the cinema and obviously on Disney Plus. We know that there is a Haunted Mansion reboot, remake, reimagining in the works as well. So, you know, fingers crossed, I guess, for that one. I believe there is a Tower of Terror film with Scarlett Johansson
Yeah,
attached
because that was on
in
the
some
rocks,
way.
right? Because of the Black Widow nonsense.
Oh yeah, you're right. I can't remember though. I mean, if it was a case of her starring, I think it was her
She
production
was
house.
producing it, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, she may well end up starring in it as well. But
Writing the
anyway,
theme
I
tune,
think
singing
they,
the theme tune.
yeah, I think that will probably end up happening. And now, Big Thunder Mountain, which comes a little bit out of left field for me. I mean, I,
Yes. Well,
I,
there was that
I,
what was that film with Armie Hammer and
well,
uh,
yes, Johnny Depp, The Lone
the
Ranger.
Lone Ranger, and the idea behind the Lone Ranger was that they were then going to rebrand Big Thunder as a lone. The film was going to be so successful off the back of how good Pirates was that they were going to rebrand Big Thunder as a Lone Ranger ride.
Mm.
And then it sucked. Like they put a lot of money into like building a really good like a train that they could then put in front of Big Thunder, like for the film that they could then put out front of Big Thunder as like this is a proper film prop that is now in the park and it's going to last forever. And then the film flopped and that idea never happened. Thankfully, I think. But yeah, now that they've gone, well, why don't we do it the other way? Well, why not make a film on the ride instead?
Yes, the whole thing has come full circle.
Yeah.
It would seem. I mean, look, there have been some great films set on trains in the past. If they just make, I just saw Bullet Train a couple of weeks ago, which I didn't think was great, but conceptually I was kind of into it. Just a load of assassins, hitmen end up on the same train together and sort of slaughter one another one by one. Just that on a Big Thunder Mountain train would be a curveball that I could get behind.
Most of the train films that I can think of are bad. Or not great.
Yeah, what
Bullet Train
films are you thinking of?
Murder
Express?
Murder on the Orient Express, Polar Express, not Limitless, Unstoppable, I think it was called. The Taking of Pelham 123, is it? Which is the remake was awful. Apparently the original was really good. Yeah.
Yeah, I've no idea.
There was this weird remake of Snakes on a Plane, but it was like Snakes on a Train.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that true?
I think that's like a Sharknado. The Sharknado guys made it.
I just Googled it. 2.2 on IMDb. One of the suggested images that comes up on the Google search is absolutely extraordinary. I don't know if you want to try and... If you Google it, you'll see the one I mean of what appears to be a snake swallowing a train. Perhaps you could pull that up because the people deserve to see it. While you do that, Big Thunder Mountain is going to be directed by a directing duo who are known as Bert and Bertie, who I was unaware of, but apparently they worked on about half of Hawkeye, Disney Plus series last year.
Okay, I've got the picture up. It's a beaut.
It's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah. 100 trapped passengers, 3,000 venomous vipers. Oh.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
The stuff of nightmares. Or maybe dreams. I don't know. Weird fetishes out there.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're obviously in, Disney's good graces. They obviously must have been happy with the work they did on Hawkeye, and they've got this gig now to work on Big Thunder Mountain. Yeah. I mean, I guess you would say the same about... I mean, the thing with sort of Pirates of the Caribbean and even the Haunted Mansion to an extent, obviously they're not sort of rich there's not necessarily a very obvious narrative there, but there is enough environmental storytelling on those rides for you to kind of take plenty of inspiration and build something from there
Yeah.
that can at least feel like, whilst you're probably going to take inspiration from other haunted house films or other pirates films as much, if not more so, than you're going to take inspiration from the rides themselves, at least there are very clear things you can pull from those rides. Whereas with Big Thunder Mountain, there's not a lot there really. This one almost feels like more of a case of, well, we're going to make something that frankly is almost completely disconnected from anything to do with the ride, other than the fact that I guess there will be a train in it and we'll call it Big Thunder Mountain. And it's almost more a case of the ride being used as a way of trying to market the film more than actually being a significant part of what the film is going to end up being about.
Yeah, I think like there's a sort of, in the Disney worlds, in the Disney comma or Disney, I don't know what you world, not the park, but in
I
general.
get what you mean.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry. There's this push towards building rides that are based on IP, but there are some classic rides that they just can't get rid of, and Big Thunder is one of them. And so they're trying to, I guess, think about it the other way and go, if we can't go that way, we'll have to go the other way. If the mountain won't come to Muhammad will go to the mountain, sort of thing.
Right. Well, it's going to be written by Kieran and Michelle Mulroney, who are a husband and wife writing duo. Previous credits include Sherlock Holmes: A Game of Shadows.
I like those. I like both of those films, and yeah.
So do I. Frankly, why aren't they working on a third one? What are they? Them making Big Thunder Mountain just suggests to me that Sherlock Holmes 3 is even further away.
Yeah, Guy Ritchie I think Guy Ritchie last year said he was like starting to come up with ideas for the third one, but
well, he keeps making Disney films too, because he did Aladdin and now he's doing Hercules, I believe.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Hercules, as in
he's doing a live action remake of Disney's Hercules.
Right. Because spoilers, but Hercules appears in the latest Marvel film, right? Latest Thor film.
Yeah, I think so.
I think it's a post-credit scene.
I've already forgotten, to be honest.
And it's Brett Goldstein. Spoilers again, I guess. Apologies, everyone. Brett Goldstein, most famous from Ted Lasso. He plays the aggressive former player. He's a sort of, I don't know. He's a guy from Premier League football. The not Gary Neville, the other one that used to play for United. The Irish guy.
Irish guy used to play for Manchester United.
Is on Sky Sports with.
Oh, Roy Keane.
Roy Keane. He's a Roy Keane sort of character in Ted Lasso, but he also is a UK comedian. He does a podcast about films, and he's Hercules in the Marvel films now, apparently.
Right. Okay. Well, let's move on. He's nothing to do with theme parks, Josh. Come on.
No.
We're a professional enterprise.
Well,
we're on YouTube now.
These people did work on Hawkeye, which is a Marvel series. So the director.
True. I guess. I hope that Hercules film is good. I love 90s animated Hercules. Speaking of things I hope go the distance, Universal has filed a patent for an interactive Pepper's Ghost.
Ooh, this one.
Which sounds very cool, actually.
Yeah.
Very cool indeed. This comes from Theme Park Insider, written up by one Robert Niles.
Of course it is.
So I guess we should explain. I mean, I'm sure people know, but Pepper's Ghost is basically an old mirror trick that allows you to feel like you're seeing a kind of three-dimensional character generally right out in front of you. It's kind of a staple of theme parks. I think some famous examples include, of course, the Haunted Mansion.
Yep.
I even saw it at the Roman Baths last year. Everyone's doing it.
Everyone's doing it. Tower of Terror does it.
Yes, Tower of Terror does do it. I believe I mean, well, I say I believe. I'm reading it from this article. I mean, there's examples of it in the Rise of the Resistance queue. I guess Ray is what they're talking about there. I guess she's a Pepper's Ghost effect.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, appearing as kind of as a hologram. Works very well there, actually. I mean, funnily enough, I mean, it makes sense, I guess, because other examples, they're obviously not trying to present them as being a hologram. They're meant to be things that are actually there. And then in Rise of the Resistance, they're like, no, this is actually a hologram. And who would have thought? It works really well there. Anyway, as I say, this patent is kind of theorizing that an interactive Pepper's Ghost could be a thing, which, I guess would be a way of cutting even more stuff. It's like if this had been a thing that existed 5-10 years ago, maybe the Great Movie Ride would still be at Hollywood Studios because they would have just been able to replace all the cast members who participate on the ride and just make them Pepper's Ghosts and then be able to save money by doing that. But
Oh boy,
yeah,
sucked.
This sounds potentially cool, and the system that is detailed in the patent can detect an orientation of a handheld device as well as a voice command by the operator of that device. From there, the system can select a visual effect from a plurality of options based on the orientation of that handheld device and the voice command. So, I mean, one application that is talked about in this article is dueling other wizards in, Harry Potter attractions, potentially.
Could you do Oh, I guess you couldn't. I was about to say, could you do a handheld hologram? But I guess you couldn't do that, right? That's a bit too...
like you're getting a bounty in Star Wars. One of those bounty pucks. Well, that would be cool, wouldn't it?
I think that's probably a bit too hard, though, right? That's because that's more because it's projected, and the puck wouldn't be big enough to store the Pepper's Ghost effect. I wouldn't have thought.
No, that sounds like far-flung future sci-fi type stuff. I mean, I guess if you think about other stuff Universal has on the books right now, that maybe it could make sense. Nintendo stuff, maybe. Pokemon, perhaps. Could you do something with that?
You could do like a battle kind of.
Yeah, like little Pokemon projections running around.
That'd be cool.
In the land that you can somehow, that you can catch, for example. That could be quite cool.
Yeah.
And all this stuff, when you sort of spitball it, you do kind of stop yourself and think, am I talking nonsense? Is this all the stuff of sci-fi? And then you kind of think, no, actually, a lot of this stuff is probably something that could be quite feasible. And I'm sure, if someone who hadn't been to a theme park for 30 years turned up and rode Rise of the Resistance or something, they'd be absolutely blown away and think that you drugged them. So
my parents were amazed by it. So
yeah, a lot of this stuff that sounds like the stuff of sci-fi, as I keep saying, will probably, we'll be looking at as quaint in 10, 15 years, probably, if it's come to fruition. So, but I love reading about stuff like this. Like, even if this is something that doesn't end up happening for whatever reason, I just find it really cool that clearly this is something they've been prototyping long enough and thinking about for long enough to feel the need to file a patent. Like, what a cool job it must be to be someone who works at somewhere like Universal and just starts to come up with crazy ideas like interactive Pepper's Ghosts. I just think that's awesome.
Yeah.
Like we've. Sorry, go ahead.
Just like some of the patents they've been coming up with recently, like this and the Harry Potter one with the magic coming out of the wands.
Oh yeah.
Something really impressive stuff that they've been coming up with recently.
Yeah, it's like on the one hand, I think it's like, well, I mean, clearly these people are absolute geniuses. Is it a waste almost that they are dedicating all their knowledge to theme park gimmicks rather than solving the world's problems? And then there's another part of me that is like, actually, no. It's great that these people who are clearly extraordinarily intelligent, creative, choose to dedicate their entire career to making ultimately silly theme park experiences.
Yeah,
I
for
think
sure.
that's great.
It brings enjoyment into the world for people to experience and enjoy.
Indeed, indeed. Where somewhere that could perhaps make good use of interactive Pepper's Ghosts one day would
Oh,
be Halloween Horror Nights,
oh,
Josh.
oh boy.
I know these segues have been absolutely on point today, if I do say so. We've now got the full lineup for Universal Orlando's Halloween Horror Nights, which start in just a few weeks now on select nights from the 2nd of September. So that's exciting. We've got 10 haunted houses, 5 scare zones, and 2 shows.
That's a lot.
So there's a lot going on here. There's a good write up on Orlando Park Stop. We'll just do a quick whistle stop tour. We talked about the weekend, of course, a few weeks ago, and that is one of the haunted houses. The weekend after hours nightmare. You're also going to get one for Halloween, the horrors of Bloomhouse, where you might see things, well, you will see things such as the Black Phone. That's been one of their big releases this past year, the Ethan Hawke
Which you didn't
horror
like, Ronnie.
film. I liked things about it, but it very much felt like 3 different films going on at the same time. Like I feel like there was perhaps a really cool limited anthology series almost to be made out
Hmm.
of the film to go straight to streaming or something like that.
Okay.
But I got a lot of tonal whiplash in a way. I don't think it all came together in the same way that, for example, It did, which I thought managed to kind of combine a Goonies film with a horror film in quite an effective way. Whereas this just felt like I really was watching literally 3 different films at the same time, and they never really came together in a way that I found particularly compelling.
Yeah, fair.
Uh,
But
you're also going to get
maybe it'll come together for a good Halloween horror house, though.
maybe, yeah. I mean, Ethan Hawke, if they can get him involved, he was very good. So
It
if he,
turns up every night to
yeah,
go through the maze.
yeah, it's a creepy mask he had on as well. To be fair,
Yeah.
you're also going to get Universal Monsters, Legends Collide, The Spirits of the Coven, Bugs Eaten Alive.
Oh,
Oh gosh, I'm going to butcher this pronunciation. Fiesta de Chupacabras.
yeah, that's pretty good.
All right. Hellblock Horror, Dead Man's Pier, Winter's Wake, The Descendants of Destruction. And then for your scare zones, you're getting the horrors of Halloween, Scarecrow Cursed Soil, Sweet Revenge, Graveyard Deadly Unrest, Conjure in the Dark. And then for your live shows, you're getting the Halloween Nightmare Fuel Wildfire and Ghoulish, a Halloween Tale. I thought that said goulash at first.
Goulash. It's
Yeah,
just a big swap meet sort of thing. Everyone just
yeah.
brings different dish together, different goulash, and you can all have a taste of everyone's goulash.
Indeed, yeah. I must admit, I'm a little. I sound jealous because I'm not going to get to either of them ultimately. But the Halloween, the Hollywood version, sorry, has some Jordan Peele stuff.
Oh, okay, yeah,
Which, yeah, I would have been into. So, yeah, none of that it seems in Florida, but you are
damn.
going to get some Jordan Peele in the Hollywood version. I think Us specifically is the film that they're going to build out into some
That's
sort of Halloween Horror Nights
that's the right one.
experience.
Was that not Halloween Horror Nights in Orlando last year or the year before, something like that?
Could well have been
Or,
actually. Yeah, you might be right. You might be right. It might be that Florida already had it, but
yeah, it's hard to keep track.
no,
They release so many houses that it's hard to keep track of which ones they've done and where and whatnot.
yeah. An exhaustive lineup, though. I mean, I'm a little bit surprised that there's no Stranger Things this year. Obviously, Stranger Things has really come back into public consciousness in a big way this year. So,
I think
yeah, I'm
that
a little surprised that there's not some Stranger Things here this year.
they had the good. There was this series of Stranger Things has had some good elements that would make a good house as well, haunted house.
Yeah, it's been the most horror. It's had the most horror of all the Stranger Things
Yeah.
seasons so far. So perhaps next year it will come back. I think next year it will be an off year for the show. I don't think the show
Hmm.
will be back for its final season until 2024. So yeah, perhaps a Stranger Things Horror Nights experience, which draws on Stranger Things 4, could be something that makes an appearance next year. But
Yeah,
we'll have to wait and see. It is an exhaustive lineup. There is plenty there. So yeah, it's something that's on my theme park bucket list. Absolutely.
for sure.
That's going to do it though, Josh. That's
Oh,
everything
that's everything.
for In the Loop this week, whether you've been watching here on YouTube or on the podcast feed, listening on the podcast feed. Thank you very much for joining us. If you enjoy the show, please do subscribe and hit that like button. If you're watching on YouTube and want more, then the podcast feed generally is a good place to go. It is normally completely different content on there each week. If you're on the podcast feed and this is your first experience of In the Loop, then head back over to the YouTube channel to find previous episodes and plenty of other stuff on there as well, including the Euro Rush vlogs from our road trip of some of Europe's best theme parks. Those are coming out each week.
They're so
are a
good.
lot of fun.
Very well
They're
edited.
great. Absolutely. We contracted a professional to do it, at least. That's what I thought until I realised that actually Josh was doing them all himself. You can find all the socials at links.parkrush.com, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, etc. And if you want to get in touch with the show, here on YouTube, of course, you can just leave a comment down below, or perhaps if you have something more detailed to say, any questions perhaps, email podcast@parkrush.com. That's going to do it. Stay safe out there, everybody, and we'll be back with more next week. Goodbye.
See ya.